What's going on, everybody? Shonen Express here, coming to you with another weekly Shonen Jump podcast. The Shonen Express podcast is back for another week. This week, we are going to be reviewing everything running in the magazine in issue 46 of Weekly Shonen Jump for the 2023 calendar release of the manga. And just right before we get totally started in this, I wanted to shout out another creator here on YouTube, if that's where you watch my stuff, who has he's done at least one stream reading stuff in Weekly Shonen Jump, and that's Yozakura Sensei. If you don't know him, look him up on YouTube. I like his regular videos. I think his content's good. I'm subscribed to him. But I just saw yesterday that he had this whole Shonen Jump read through. So I think that's really cool. I love it when other people are interested in the magazine as a whole. I don't think too many of us here, us English speakers, are into that. And so I saw that he was doing that, and I wanted to shout him out. He has many more subscribers than I do, so he doesn't need me to shout him out there. But I did see it, and I am his subscriber, so I was super, super hyped to see him do that. But that being said, how these videos work is we're going to briefly at least, talk about every single chapter that came out in Weekly Shonen Jump this week. And the timestamps for that will be in the description. And I do that because not everybody reads everything in the magazine. In fact, probably a lot of you don't read everything. So you can go to the time card, see, okay, these are the series I read, and this is when he talks about them, and just watch those parts. That's totally fine with me. That makes a ton of sense. No matter where you're watching this, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, those in the description of this episode will be those time cards, and you can go and do that so that you don't spoil yourself for another episode or for another series that maybe you don't read or you're catching up on or whatever is like that. So yeah, without going any further with that, I think we should just jump into this week in Weekly Shonen Jump. And as always, I'm going to start with the series that got the cover, and that is My Hero Academia, chapter 403. So first of all, the double color page spread was really cool. I like that All Might's in his suit, his tech suit that he used to fight All For One in these last couple chapters, with him, Shimura, and Deku in that color page. While I'm not that into the plot developments that have happened in My Hero Academia recently, the art has taken a turn to be, it was good in the beginning, but I really think the art is incredible now. It's the level of detail that Horikoshi is able to get out of this seems to be incredible to me, and this color page is just an example of that. So we open the chapter with Kid All Might, which is so great. I love Kid All Might's face, and kind of reflecting on what was he able to do? What was he able to do? And we see at the end here, he tried to take down. Remember last time we saw My Hero Academia in the last chapter, he was trying to take down All For One, and we thought he was going to be able to take All For One out, but it looks like All For One was prepared. All For One was able to stop him, and it appears like truly take him down. Some of the cool things in this fight, at the end of this fight here, the air fleet that used to go with Star and Stripe was obliterated. And as All For One says, Star is no longer with us. So that fleet was taken down, and All Might was taken down in this very slow and dramatic way. All Might was taken down, and we see somebody is back up. Bakugo has stood back up from his time down, and we are reminded of that thing right in this part where there's no talking. There's just those big letters, the end of an era and the beginning, right? We see Bakugo is back up. He's not dead. He's back up on his feet. He's probably going to get back in this. And he's holding a little All Might card. And they remember back, and All Might is reflecting on the things that he was able to leave behind, and that little last dot turns into Bakugo and Deku as kids, and they're having the All Might cards. And then we see the shot of their faces in the top. So I don't know what's going to happen from here on out. I don't know where this is going to kind of go, but we are definitely wrapping up. And it was a good chapter. I want to preface this with, I think this was a good chapter. I like that this being the end of All Might. I like Bakugo's involvement in this thing. I think he's always been a big part of this All Might and Deku relationship, and so I really liked that they brought him back in like this. So yeah. I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the future. Obviously, I don't know, but yeah, if you've any My Hero Academia thoughts, leave them in the comments. But that's really all I had to say about this chapter. Next, we will move on to the color pages, and this week we only have 2 color pages in English. The third color page in this issue went to another one-shot. I believe this is the final one-shot in this series of one-shots we've had for a long time. So I think next week we will get 3 regular color pages for regular series that run. I think, if I'm wrong about that, let me know down in the comments. But I'm pretty sure that's what's gonna happen. So we'll have 3 color pages, but this week we only have 2. And the first one went to Martial Master Asumi, chapter 17. So we pick up where we left off. Nito has Kinojo in that standing ninja choke, and we see that this fight has brought to Kinojo's mind that he doesn't really know Nito. And we see throughout this episode that Nito doesn't really know him either. He even expresses that too. I think one of the things that this chapter really emphasized, and one of the things that I want to emphasize in my reviewing of it, is the state of this arena that they're fighting in. I forget if they call it the underground or what they call this, but and that the leader of this, the organizer, seems to have a good heart, and he has a good, he is good-natured in what he wants to do here. But essentially, this place is a group of amateur fighters. I mean, they're just guys who like fighting and violence, and they brought together to fight. They're not trained fighters like Nito wants to be, like even Kazulo is, his older brother. They're not trained MMA fighters. They're just brawlers. And Kinojo was a great example of that. A guy who is definitely physically strong. He hits hard, but he's not a fighter. He's not. And and Kazulo and Taiga seem to berate Nito for not breaking his arm when he could have, and 2, not winning easier against these opponents that shouldn't be able to damage Nito, shouldn't be able to phase him like that. So it's yeah. So I get that. I think I understand that. I think that's interesting an interesting way to do this. And we see even later that Taiga in his fight against like the hero of the dropout. That's what this place is called. The hero of the dropout, right? This guy Kyobe. We see Taiga fight him and twist his ankle extremely badly. Because before he even had the chance to tap out. And so one of the things I like, right, is that Taiga, although he's clearly set up to be Nito's rival, he's not like evil. I didn't take away from this chapter that he was a bad dude. I took away from this chapter that he has such a high respect for combat sport and for the ring, that when he enters the ring, it's 100% business. He is going to take care of that fight the quickest way he possibly can, and if you don't tap out in time, that's on you. This is a dangerous activity, and you need to treat that with the respect it deserves. I actually like that idea. I think Taiga has a really good idea, but of course, Nito being our main character, I definitely feel where he's coming from. And I love that this chapter essentially set up that final confrontation between Taiga and Nito in the final round here, where Nito even says, I really don't want to lose this. I love that, because if you remember, Nito was having problems because Taiga, with the other orphans and why he's fighting, he like related to Taiga. He like felt Taiga's pain, and so he was like, I'm gonna have a hard time fighting this guy. But now he's like, I want to win this. I want to show that this guy's wrong. And I just love the nuance in this discussion, right? Kazlo, obviously, he is kind of meaner, right? And we know that. And so he's the essentially the villain of this story, at least so far. And so, of course he's going to say the brutal answer, but Taiga's not quite there, right? He's not quite as brutal. And so Nito is like, I understand where you're coming from, but I think you're wrong. I love that. I love this. And hopefully we're going to get an ideological battle going on in this final phase of the Dropouts tournament here. I'm interested to see if Nito can win this. I think there is a real chance that Nito does not win this fight, and that Taiga wins and then has the credentials to go pro. But this would leave Nito with needing one more amateur win under his belt before he can go pro. And I think that there might be narrative weight behind that decision. So I actually, if I'm going to make a guess, I'm going to guess that Nito is not going to win his fight with his fight with Taiga. Although I think that fight is probably going to last more than one chapter. So we probably won't get the end of that fight next week, but I do think Taiga's going to win. So we'll have to see what happens there. And maybe even Nito gets hurt. But that all being said, I loved Martial Master Asumi this week. I always love Martial Master Asumi, but I really think that this is one of the best chapters of this series I've read so far. So I absolutely love it. It is an awesome manga. And yeah, that's what I had to say about Martial Master Asumi this week. And our second and final color page of this week went to Cipher Academy, chapter 44. So for those of you who have listened to this, Cipher Academy, not one of my favorite series running in the magazine right now. Although, another good chapter, and this digital Cipher Academy arc is definitely really cool. The color page itself, I think, is neat. I like that it shows where Irohazaka is right now, and then like in the shadow is like the more serious Irohazaka. I think that's really cool. So it was a cool color page, mostly white. Interesting choice for a color page, but hey, I'm not the author. And the art did look good. But so if you remember last week, they blew up, right? they Irohazaka and Koshibai seemed to blow up. On the last leg of the first floor, but they didn't blow up. The giant bomb was actually a bomb shelter, and so they were able to take shelter in that. I think that's interesting. What I liked about this is it shows that we see that they had to work together really well. We talk about the idea that, in this chapter, they talk about the idea of a Chekhov's gun, and like, if something is introduced to the world, it has to be used, and how even in game design, that also applies. It applies in stories, but it also applies in game design. And so, of course, the giant bomb wasn't just all for show, and so they were able to figure it out that way. What I like about this is I like that this is at least a little difficult. At least it takes some thinking and some processing, and obviously the math skills that was required to get to this point were difficult, but I think that the bomb incident was interesting and difficult. And so, but really that kind of pales in comparison to what I think is the biggest thing that happened this chapter. And we got a lot of Irohazaka's backstory. A backstory we haven't seen so far. And we're introduced to a character that I think is really cool, which is, and I'm definitely could be saying this name wrong, but I read it as Ambitious Yonakwiguisu. And we know another person with that last name, right? The little girl who's the leading class private from one of the other classes. I forget which one, if you know, down in the comments. But this is the older sister of that student. And remember, if you remember the decision that Irohazaka had to make between either, talking to the younger sister of this person we met this chapter, this Ambitious, or learning more about the battlefield dancer. This is that person. This is the connection she has to the younger sister. Is this person? That single page panel where this person is bending the bars back, or has somehow done that, looks like she's like actually bending it with her arm. That's so cool. I mean, it looks so cool. A lot of panels in this manga look really cool. It was interesting to learn that Irohazaka worked as a bomb diffuser, was trained as a bomb diffuser when she was in custody. This is like kind of actually smart tactically, I think, right? If you can get the enemy and train them to do this job, then if they do it wrong, they simply blow up. But if they do it right, then you've thrown your enemy off and you've defused the bomb. So that was pretty interesting. But I loved, mainly this backstory was to introduce this ambitious person and the leadership style that she had, and how Irohazaka wants to emulate that. Of course, we then met up with N, and so we finally we have another member of our team. We have Irohazaka, Koshibai, and N. So the three of them will continue on down the line, and we get a 2-page spread that looks so cool. The art in this series, I will say, the art in this series looks amazing to me. And while I don't, while I kind of get confused with some of the things that they do, I do think this art is just simply incredible. So it does have that going for it for sure. But this double-page spread with Kubanashi and Yugata is so cool. And their whole conversation and this game that this endless craps that they're going to play, I'm excited to see what that means next week. These two obviously have a history. They obviously do not like each other. Taiyu, who is never this aggressive, is extremely aggressive with Kubanashi. So I'm very interested to see where we're going from here, and what this endless craps is going to be. It's a level 5. It's 5 stars in difficulty. So we'll see. We will see kind of how this plays out. But it was a really good chapter, to be fair. It was a very good chapter. It was an awesome chapter. It's one of my favorite chapters, probably, of Cipher Academy that we've seen in a long time. So yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought Cipher Academy was really good this week, and that's really all I had to say about it. So the next series that we got to cover is One Piece. This week, chapter 1095 was released, and we continue with the insane revelations that One Piece has been doing. First of all, I think the cover page was hilarious. The monkey squirrel thing stealing Buggy's nose, that's good comedy. But getting into the chapter proper, the thing that we really care about, Saint Saturn is not affected by Bonnie's stab wound. So this, and they don't know, right? Even the people standing around here don't know what happened here. They don't know why the blood disappeared, why it seemed that it didn't have any effect, but it didn't. I'm doubling down on what I said last week. I'm not sure. I don't think that this is just a devil fruit power. I think that this is something wholly different than we've seen before. And I'm not the first person to say that by any means, but I mean, this feels different. It just feels different. There is something going on here that is much different than just a regular devil fruit power. And again, we don't fully know what Saint Saturn is right now. We assume that he's awakened, because the little weird flame cloud thing is around him. But yeah, so we're not in a good spot in the main story, right? Bonnie's being held up and is going to get shot down, right, by everybody else. But we then go into a flashback of Kuma's life. And this is so interesting. We hear that Kuma is part of this other race called the Buccaneer people. Now, one of the things that I think is interesting about this, right, is if you remember, Big Mom said that the only race she didn't have was Lunarian, which is what King is. I believe that's what she said. Again, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Which means that we've probably seen another member of the Buccaneer people on her crew. Or at least she has somebody in her family on her crew that is of the Buccaneer people. So, I don't know. If you guys have ideas about that, leave it down in the comments. I'm interested to see what you guys think about that. But it was one thing that kind of came up for me. But this backstory, I mean, Oda always does backstories that are very emotional. And my word, I mean, this might be one of the most emotional backstories in the series. I mean, in such a quick amount of time, right? His parents have him, and the doctor's like, "Oh, I won't say anything," but they find him, they find them out, and they are captured and made slaves of the celestial dragons. And so they're branded as slaves, and his mom dies. And Kuma, the little Kuma asked at one point, "Why? I'd rather be dead too." When his dad tells him to survive. And then his dad goes on to tell him about the sun god Nika and how Nika will return and will save their people. And the drum beat, of Nika. He tells him about all of this. And as he's saying this, and they're in change, he gets shot and dies in front of Kuma's eyes. I mean, that was so brutal. We also learned that apparently the celestial dragons have this thing where every 3 years they, or at least they did have this thing where every 3 years they have a native hunting competition. One of my guesses is maybe that this practice has ended since this incident, but we don't know that yet. We'll get into that. But that's one of my guesses, is that they don't do this anymore because of what happened here on God Valley. But in God Valley, they have this competition where they're just killing the natives, and they also release some of their slaves or prisoners to be part of this game as well. And we see immediately Holy Knight Saint Figurland Garlig. We see him cut down the king immediately, and he starts with a negative 10,000 point handicap, and he's like, of course, that's a good handicap. The thing about Garling that I'm sure every human being who's read this chapter has said is, that man looks like Shanks, and we're pretty sure that they are related, right? We're pretty sure that Shanks is a Figurland. What that exactly means, we're not sure. Is this his dad? Is it his grandfather? Is it his uncle? We have no idea. But somehow they're probably related, because this face looks a whole lot like Shanks, right? And so everybody's kind of said that. That's not super crazy. But we learned that Kuma has run away, and some people have found him to take him back to this game. But then we meet a young Emporio Ivankov and another slave named Jenny, and they look like they have also escaped and want to break out. These two are really interesting. First of all, I love seeing Ivankov as a kid. I think that it's really cool, and that his head is just as big as it was when we met him later. It's still so disproportionately huge, his head. But I think it's really cool to see him as a kid. I like that. And they're going to save Kuma. And this then goes back to this backstory that Ivankov has with Kuma in the main story that we've seen. And so I think that's really cool. And this other slave, Jenny, right? Now, I would say this is a guess of mine, but it's not. I heard this. I heard this from somebody else. I forget exactly who said this. You know what? It might have been O'Hara. He might have said this. But that we might be looking at Luffy's mother. This Jenny might be Luffy's mom. But, obviously we don't know that. We can reserve that. I think there are some signs that we might, the meat is an interesting touch. But no matter what, these three are going to end up with the revolutionaries, right? These three are somehow going to meet up with Dragon, and these are revolutionaries for sure. I think we can be sure of that. We know Kuma and Ivankov were, and so probably Ginny was too. Or is, I don't know. Ginny might still be out there. But this backstory has already been incredible. I cannot wait to see where we're going to go. Furthermore, Egghead Island has ended up being one of the best arcs ever. I mean, so many incredible things happen in this arc. But yeah, I should shut up about One Piece, but it was a great chapter. I just can't wait. I can't wait for this to keep going and continue in the future. This backstory is going to be really amazing. And we're finally learning about Kuma, a character that I've wanted to know about for a long time. I know a lot of other people have as well. So yeah, those are my thoughts on One Piece. And the next series that we got to talk about is Kagurabachi Chapter 5. Now, of all the series running on Weekly Shonen Jump right now, I think this one is getting the most hype online. I mean, I've been told that some of it is like a joke, right? Is kind of like poking fun at this idea that certain series blow up. But I've seen some of it that is legitimately people praising this series. I'm gonna reserve. You guys, if you've listened to my talks about this, in the previous weeks, you know that I'm a fan of Kagurabachi. I like Kagurabachi a lot, but I'm gonna reserve whether I think this is like a incredible like Jujutsu Kaisen level manga until we get more chapters. And I'm sure on chapter 5 of JJK we would also be like, well, we're not sure. But anyway, this chapter was another incredible chapter. I mean, I will say that this chapter mainly. There's some fun antics between Chihiro and Char, and I think that that's cool where they go to get food. She still has not told him why they are searching for her. And my guess here's my guess. My guess is that Char either is the sword or somehow knows the location of Cloud Gouger, of the sword that they have been looking for, or maybe another sword. Actually, it's probably another sword. My guess is she knows the location or is another one of the legendary or the swords that are enhanced with sorcery. Also, Shiba is such a cool character. I love Shiba. He's like in his interrogation of the guy that they fought last week, the Daruma guy. It's such a cool interrogation. I really like Shiba. And he ends up getting some info out of him that we see later. And the introduction we get to to Genichi Sojo, the guy who I'm assuming is going to, at least for the next couple chapters, be a villain for us, probably at least for this arc where we're looking to get Cloud Gouger back. We see him. He's got an interesting form. He's dark on most of. He's like black. He has black spots on most of his body. I don't know if those are supposed to be tattoos or not, but he has this darkness on most of his body, and so he's an interesting character for sure. And we get this kind of like weird swirl thing, like conglomeration of bodies in the middle of the street that ends this chapter. I don't really have a ton to say about this chapter, in all honesty, other than, I mean, this guy's probably gonna be around for a while. And this is the Cloud Gouger arc, right? We're going to get that sword, hopefully, by the end of this arc. I do think it's interesting that as this situation gets more and more severe, Char puts her hood up more and more, and then actually ends up covering her face entirely by the last panel of this chapter. So these are the people that are looking for Char, that want Char. I don't know why. We still don't know why, but I'm sure we're going to find out. I'm interested to see what happens next time, but that's really all I have to say about Kagurabachi this week. So the next chapter we have to go over here is Undead Unluck. Chapter 179 was released this week, and we continue with the recruiting Rip and Latla, and I guess technically Layla. We continue with their recruitment, right? Last week we saw that Latla also got one of the legs of the artifact, along with Rip, so that they can fight together. And this week we get more of that, right? We get Latla saying kind of outright and emotionally that like she's tired of Rip always shouldering everything on his own, and that she wants to help. And even Layla says the same kind of thing when they're talking about moving her for Fuko to operate, which is kind of strange. Again, if you understand why Fuko can operate or should, leave that down in the comments. I'm not totally clear on that, but the fight is cool. I really like how they use Unmove and Unseen all the time. It's such an interesting like combo, and like how Chikara and I forget the Unseen guy's name, but how they like work together in tandem all the time. I think that's such a really cool idea. I also just realized that that Blade Runner like evolved, like combined together, and like evolved in that way. I know that it said it in the chapter. I didn't quite realize it till I went to review it for this. But anyway, I think Latla's ability of untrust manifesting as well is just perfect, and they put the hurt on Sick. So I think this is really good. It was a great chapter. I love how, you know, it showed that their teamwork and how they're going to work together in the future. I like Latla as a character more now. It's just that simple. So I think that this is a good chapter, a great chapter for Latla and for Rip, and for the fight against Sick. I think Sick is a very cool villain. So I don't know that we're gonna get a whole lot more of him though, because he was just hit with unrepair. So I think we've got him, and we're gonna move on to the next. Hopefully in the near future, we're gonna move on to the next target of Fuko's, you know, collecting of allies here. So. Yeah, that's really all I had to say about Undead Unluck this week. It was very cool, though. So that'll bring us to Sakamoto Days. This week, what came out was chapter 139. And this is a good chapter, too, right? This wrapped up the Hisuke versus Kamihate fight in a very comical way. Kamihate is such a weird character. Their fight was so cool that I don't even care that Kamihate is like a kind of character for me. But it's such a weird way to leave this fight. But it all worked out in the end. Of course it did. And Hisuke's back. I love that Hisuke stays with Sakamoto. It doesn't go. For a minute there, I thought he was going to go with Kamihate. And like later on in the story, he'd come back as a much better sniper. But I'm glad he didn't do that. I'm glad he's still on the team. Hisuke is one of my favorite characters in this series. So I love that. And that part of the chapter was fine. I just don't really have anything to say about that. The second half of the chapter, when we get to finally see this Haruma guy who we saw earlier, who works for Slur, who works there, he just demolishes these JAA guys. And, you know, of course he does. We've kind of come to expect that at this point. But definitely there's some ominous things going on here. But the executive, this Muto, executive of the JA is going to come and meet Slur. So we'll see where this goes. I didn't really like this Muto guy. I thought he sucked. I didn't like him at all. So like, I'm not really concerned about that. All in all, I didn't really have a ton to say about this chapter. That like, it wasn't like a whole profound revelation here. It was good. It was a good Sakamoto Days chapter. Just, you know, focused more on the comedy at the first part, and then the second part, I'm like, well, okay, so Slur's doing more stuff. So that's really all I had to say about Sakamoto Days this week. So that will bring us to the next manga we have to discuss, which is Mama Yuyu Chapter 6. So I know last week I talked about how I thought Chapter 5 was one of the best chapters that this series had produced so far. Chapter 6... over and above, just demolished that opinion. This is the best chapter of Mama Yuyu. Way ahead of any other chapter this series has produced so far. So, in this chapter, we follow up a little bit on the awkwardness between Alicia and Corleo, that kind of comes from what she asked him at the last chapter, right? In the last chapter. And we also meet this guy named Escaba, who is a demon lord from another dimension. And so this guy also is a demon lord. And so the plan here that Pinello tells us is that these three, Corleo, Alicia, and Escabe, are going to team up as a unit so that they can fight these otherworldly monsters together and hopefully get everyone back to their world in one piece. And so that seems to be Escaba's main goal, is to just get back to his world. We learn that that in his world, the demons are almost entirely eradicated. They've been eradicated by the humans. And so he just wants to get back to his world so he can help his friends in their fight. And so obviously all of these worlds are a little different, as we've learned from both Evan and Alicia, other hero candidates. But this is the first, other than End, that crazy eye demon in the beginning, this is the first other demon lord that we've met, is here in Escaba. We also meet a guy named Ben, one of the guys one of the a staff officer in the Demon Hero Central Army. I think it's weird that his name is just Ben. You know, he didn't have a lot to do in this chapter, so I don't know that he'll be a big part. But we see that what Escaba can do is he can use his sigil sorcery to give mass to his shadow and control it that way. And so they have this the three of them, Escaba, Corleo, and Elise, have a great discussion, about what they want out of this and what their goals are. And I'm thinking, right, as I'm reading this chapter, I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing the 3-man cell kind of thing here, right? These three are going to be our main three. At some point, probably Corleo and Escaba are going to develop some kind of rivalry with each other. Like this is the direction this show's going to head, and Pinello is going to be their like teacher. I was like, okay, this is great. We're gonna get into this, and we're gonna go on this path. And then we get to the end of this chapter, where Escaba has what looks like taken Alicia out. I don't know if he's killed her or not. I at first thought she was dead. I thought that she was dead, and Corleo simply attacks him right away. Now, I think there's a possibility that this is not what we think it is. I think there's a possibility that there's some misunderstanding here, that that's not Alicia or something like that. And if that's the case, then maybe this 3-man cell thing is still going to happen. But I hope not, because I love this twist. And to be fair, Mama Yuyu has done this before. It's very good at making me feel safe about halfway through the chapter, and then throwing me in a different direction. And this chapter did that so incredibly well. I began to trust Escaba. I too was skeptical of him as a demon lord from another world. I was skeptical too, but I actually thought he was going to be a good guy until the end of this chapter. I really thought this was a good twist, an incredible twist, and very hopeful for the future of Mama Yuyu as a series. So I was very happy for that. I was very happy to see that this chapter was so incredible to me. So yeah, that's really all I had to say about Mama Yuyu. And that'll bring us to our next chapter, which is 2 on Ice. This week, chapter 4 was released. This is a good manga too. What I love about this last batch of manga, these 3 that came out at the same time, the Kagurabachi, Mama Yuyu, and 2 on Ice. I think all 3 are really good. I think there's a chance that all 3 make it past that 20 chapter mark. But obviously we'll have to wait to see. But this is about 2 on Ice, not those other ones. So this is a great chapter. First of all, I actually didn't know the history of the La Strada song in Japanese figure skating. I didn't know that. You know what? I actually might have heard the name Daisuke Takahashi before. But I didn't know any of this history with the figure, his impact on the figure skating world, and probably how big of an impact that had to have on the sport of figure skating in Japan. I mean, this is the only, Olympic medal that they've won, and so that's quite incredible. And so they do the routine, and really, what I want to say is the art is incredible. I really love how the art kind of accentuates what we're supposed to see. We see them side by side a lot. We see them do the same moves. And so the art really helps me get into the spirit of what's happening in their world. And they end up attempting the triple axel. And they don't make it. And if they would have, it would have been the first triple axel, side by side triple axel ever done in Japan. So that, or in the world even. And so that's kind of incredible. But they didn't land it. They both fell, but they also both fell in unison, which is so interesting, right? It's such an interesting thing, that they're so in sync that they even fall in sync, right? And so as this is going, we see into Hyuma's mind, and we see that Hyuma is continually like, I'm going to do it. I love this idea. I love the idea of pairing up. Remember, this is the thing that's going to make them decide whether they're going to be a pair or not. And so Hyuma is all in. He's like, I was able to push her. I was able to push her, and keep up with Kisara. I totally want this to be a thing. But Kisara has the exact opposite feeling at the end, right? Seeing how much Hayuma is improved in such a short time, and how he didn't really he might have the gifts to be an incredible singles figure skater. She begins to get scared, and she's going to tell him about her past. And so I think probably this guy, what's his name? Takun is what she calls him, right? This guy Takun was maybe a pairs skater with her before, or was supposed to be a pairs skater with her, but realized his own potential and wanted to do singles by himself and didn't want to pair up with her anymore. And first of all, I'm not sure that it's impossible to do both, but I understand, wanting to focus on the thing you want to focus on, and Kisara really wants to focus on pairs skating. But the problem is, right, and this is a problem they address in this chapter, the men in the pairs always have to tone it back to match the women in the pairs. And my guess is, not my guess, I'm almost positive that there are workarounds for this in real life. That there are ways to plan routines and such that the men are just pushed just as far as the women, right? And I think a lot of pairs skating that we see in real life does that. So they're just simply not at that level yet when they're just side-by-side skating, right? When they do more pairs activities, I think that's when we'll get into more of the side where Hayuma's going to have to be pushed all the way. But as it stands now, they are, Kisara is still a little bit ahead, but we're going to have this conversation because it seems like Hayuma is all in on this pairs and Kisara is not. Kisara is not all in on the pair because she's afraid that Hayuma is going to leave. I think that Kisara is going to end up being a relatively emotional girl. Someone who is scarred from this Takun guy who was supposed to be with her in the past, and is scared that Hayuma is going to do the same thing. That's my guess, but those are my thoughts on 2 on Ice this week. So that'll bring us to our next chapter, which this week was chapter 22 of Nue's Exorcist. So, I don't have a ton to say about this chapter. One, I was right. Nue is not evil. She's got some reason for doing what she's doing. And we knew that last week, right? Even when Moriyuki was talking about Nue and Nue being, this 6th Hyo that is supposed to be so bad and cause calamity and everything. Nue has a plan to stop the other Hyo from creating that calamity. And she thinks her plan is better than the plan that the Exorcists have. And so this chapter kind of culminates in Nue recommending Gakuro to be the captain in charge of her area, the area that is her Hyo. So here's the thing. If I had to take a guess, and I'm really shooting from the hip on this one, I don't think Gakuro is going to be named the captain. I think that another captain is going to come in and be in charge of Gakuro. Because Gakuro is not very strong. I don't think he's there. I think maybe Shiroha might be able to be a captain, but even then I don't think so. So I'm interested to see who the captain ends up being. Maybe they make it Gakuro. I don't know, but I don't think that that's actually going to happen. Anyway, it was a neat chapter, but really that's really all I have to say about this. We got some explanation about first of all, we met the other 5 captains, or the 4 captains we hadn't met yet, and they're interesting in their own ways and stuff. So it was fun. It was a fun chapter, but that's honestly all I had to say about Nue's Exorcist this week. And so that will bring us to chapter 121 of Blue Box. I always love Blue Box. You guys know, if you've listened to my other podcast, the other Shonen Express podcast, I love Blue Box. It's one of my favorites running in the series, running in the magazine right now. I just like it. I have a lot of fun with it, and this chapter was no exception. First of all, that stuff, the problematic nature of Akari is kind of laughed off in this chapter. Like, where she seems to be into Taiki, it's kind of laughed off by Chinatsu and Taiki in this chapter. And they have that cute moment at the end where he takes the shoe off and everything. So it seems like at least for now, this is not going to be a real problem in their relationship. And their relationship, honestly, in the last couple chapters has kind of just been the rock, been the stable part of this, of this manga for the last couple chapters now. So I hope that it continues that way. Obviously I'm a big fan of this relationship, so I hope that it continues that way. But the thing I really want to talk about this chapter is Yusa and how he sucks to everybody, or I guess I should call him Haruto, the little brother Yusa, right? He's being so mean to everybody. My favorite thing, and one of my favorite characters in this whole series is Haru, right? And I probably have said that before, but this is exactly why Haru is one of my favorite characters, and I think he even did something like this the last chapter 2 with Taiki. But so as Yusa's going into this whole thing about how it's everybody people have to practice more, Haru cuts him off and says, "From what I can tell, you have a long way to go too." And Yusa says, "Excuse me?" He goes, "Fine, you want a match then?" And Haru says, "We're practicing shots right now, baby bird." And it's just, there's something about this, Haru's goal is absolutely to make his teammates better. The philosophy that Taiki describes at the end, where if we make everyone on the team better, then you have better competition to play against right away. That is absolutely something he got from Haru. But Haru's way of doing that is in this sarcastic way. And we've seen him do that with Taiki, but obviously Taiki is a much different person than Yusa. And so there's a big gap in how they react to that and how they respond and stuff like that. So it was super interesting, and I just thought it was really funny, and it's moments like that that really make Haru super interesting to me as a character, and why I like him in this series a ton. And like I said, the cuteness at the end with Taiki and Shinatsu is super great too. So it was a good chapter. It was a good Blue Box chapter. That's honestly all I had to say about it. Not anything, earth-shattering, but we had a little bit of a reflection on who Hyodo is, and I'm going to love his relationship with Yusa. And I think that what Yusa will add to Taiki and Hyodo's relationship is going to be, or Haru's relationship is going to be really cool too. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But that's all I had to say about Blue Box this week. So that'll bring us to our next chapter, which is Akane-Banashi. Chapter 82 came out this week. And it was another great Akane-Banashi chapter. If you've listened to some of these other podcasts, I'm a huge Akane-Banashi fan, and I'm a huge Chocho fan, and this is another great Chocho chapter. I love this character. I think he's such a great introduction to Akane-Banashi, to this series, and I think he really is going to heighten the series in total. But the big thing that came out of this chapter is that both Akane and Karashi are seeking Chocho to train them. And so that section kind of ends with Chocho saying, "You know how I roll, right? With dice." So my guess is that not both of them are going to be able to train with Chocho. I think it'd be cool if they both, won their gambling set and were both able to be trained by Chocho. But my guess is that it's not going to happen. I don't know if Akane or Karashi's going to make it. I can't really tell at this point. But either way, I want more Chocho in this story. So I hope it's Akane, because then we'll get to see more of him. So I like that. I think that's definitely going to be cool. But another big revelation is that the pupil above Akane, the next pupil up from Akane of her main master has said that he wants to go to Osaka. And this kind of goes with what he was saying a couple chapters ago, where he was saying that he feels like Akane has surpassed him, that she's gone so far ahead of him in skill that he can't keep up. And so I think this is part of that. He wants to go to Osaka to train, and so I'm into that. I think that's really cool. But honestly, that's all I had to say about Akane-Banashi this week. It was a good chapter, but nothing super crazy happened. But that's what I got. And next up on the chopping block, we have Head Gill, chapter 16. So, it's probably no surprise to you, if you've heard me talk about Ice Head Gill before, that I've kind of soured a little bit on this series, to be quite honest. It's not a series that, like, is super interesting to me anymore, which is a shame because its first couple chapters I thought were really good. I just find it a little confusing and hard to follow. And, if you disagree with me, please leave it down in the comments. I'd love to hear how you feel about Ice Head Gill. If you like it a lot more or don't, or agree with me that it's not your favorite, whatever. I'd love to hear about that. This chapter in particular felt fast. So first of all, we see that Gill has become a little more accustomed to using his water-based powers. We see that he's able to make that giant whale, and that's kind of cool. And he's kind of gotten better at this, which is good, because they're heading into a huge fight. We've also heard that if they want to stop the winter, they need to gather these 4 relics: Odin's water, Thor's wind, Freya's earth, and Loki's fire. And it seems like they have 3 of these, right? Like, they have Odin's water is what Gill has. Thor's wind seems to be Sana's bow. Freya's earth seems to be the swords that Greatest and Sliz have. And Loki's fire seems to be what Gill's dad has. So Dreki, what he has, the Lich version of him anyway, what he has on his person. So that's where we're kind of going. And then this big battle ensues, and the main 2 or 2 other captains show up. So the captains look neat, all of that. The fighting looked neat, things happen. I'm just not that into it, and so I don't have a ton to say. But what I will say is, my guess is that the next series that ends, or at least in the next batch of ending series, is going to be Ice Head Gill. I don't think Ice Head Gill is going to survive the 20 chapter mark. I think this has all of the feelings to me of a rush to the end chapter, and so I think that Ice Head Gill may have gotten the axe already in the editorial department, and we are rushing on to the end. That's what it felt like to me. If you disagree with me, leave it down in the comments, but that's really all I had to say about Ice Head Gill this week. So next up on our list then is Kill Blue. This week, chapter 25 came out. And again, not a ton that I have to say about Kill Blue this week. I do think it was a good chapter. We followed up on the Noren is, crazy in love with Ogami. We followed that up this week. Really the only thing I have to say is it's like, I think this chapter was very funny. I think it was pretty funny how serious Noren is about being in love with Ogami. I think that's hilarious. And I love that he's like, is this how it would be if she was in love? And then of course, no. Kazuma says, yeah, I told her she would be I hypnotized her to be obsessively in love. And so that was funny. It led to funny shenanigans. And then they end up going on like a date by accident and end up on that Ferris wheel. And we got into some territory that honestly was a little weird. I don't know, it almost was like a step too far for me. I don't know where the line is here for Ogami and Noren. I don't understand. I do understand why Ogami is so against this. I absolutely get that. It would be very strange for him to be into this, as this series is outlined. But I just situations like that made me I don't know. I'm this is a weird spot to put him in. It just feels weird. It feels weird to me. If you disagree, leave it in the comments. But I didn't love that. It made me feel strange. I mean, he resolves it without having to kiss her and everything. So, it works out. It was strange to me. It was definitely strange. But I do love at the end when he's like, do you like me? And she's like, what the gross? I like how she explains it. And she goes back to what the thing is, all right? So what I like about this is I think we're back to the status quo. It's not like this awakens some love she had for Ogami, which is very good because honestly that plot point creeps me out a little bit. I like that when we head in that direction in this manga, I get a little creeped out. But we're not headed that way, so we're headed away from that, and that's good. But honestly, those are my thoughts from Kill Blue this week. Not a ton of thoughts, but Yeah, that's what I got. And so that brings us to Me and Roboco. Chapter 157 is the chapter that dropped this week. And this chapter, coming off of last week, which was a chapter that I really thought was quite hilarious, I also thought that this chapter was really funny and quite hilarious as well. I There's a couple gags that I'll talk about. First of all, I like the general idea. I really like seeing like different versions of characters like this. So we have the sci-fi Roboco, the rom-com Roboco, the Showa era gag Roboco, and the battle manga, traditional battle manga Roboco. All of them are like a little different in their own way, and I think that they're really funny. I love that Bondo confuses the real Roboco for like a horror manga Roboco just because she looks dejected. And my favorite joke, as usually my favorite jokes for this series are, is like how Gachi Gorilla is always dead in every other universe except for this one. That was funny too. I thought the whole thing was funny. I like this different thing. I love that they say at one point, the artist recently watched the new Spider-Man movie, and like I'm guessing they mean like the Miles Morales Spider-Man movie where he goes into different dimensions and everything, and there's different Spider-Men, and so like that's what inspired this. One of the things I really like about this manga is that because it's a gag manga, the author can just do stuff like this. I mean, he can have these one-off things that happen. He could do stuff like this, and it's funny. It makes it funny and enjoyable. And what I love is, there's a little end card that says, "Will these Robocos be able to return to their timelines?" And then we see the three boys, Bondo, Matsuo, and Gachi Gorilla, say, "Wait, what? This is going to continue?" It would be really funny to me if next week we don't talk about this at all. I think that's actually might be what's going to happen is we just don't address the other Robocos and where they went. And maybe they're still around. Maybe we'll see them later. But yeah, I like this chapter. I didn't really have anything else to say about the chapter other than just, it was fun. It was a fun chapter. I really liked it. Yeah, it was good. Me and Roboco comedy. It was what I come to this manga for. So that will bring us to the next chapter that we're going to cover, and that is Mission Yozakura Family, chapter 198. So, first of all, it's amazing how close we are to chapter 200 of Mission Yozakura Family. I mean, I remember, like, several years ago when this manga started. I mean, this manga started right along the same time I started making videos. And so, it's such a... This manga is such a like special one to me in particular, but all of that is kind of an aside just about Mission Yozakura Family. But this chapter itself was pretty good. I liked we get what Alpha and Hifumi were doing, how they were trying to get Katana to talk about what Ryu's weakness is, and they found that out. This manga really illustrated to me how creepy Ryu is. He is a weirdo, and we knew that before, but even when I want to feel sympathetic for him and on his side, he's just like scary and creepy, and it makes me not want to be on his side. You know what I mean? So, yeah, he's interesting. He's an interesting character, but it's hard to view him as anything but a villain. But mainly, I loved how, at the end there when Alpha gets them out, it's Tayo that comes in with the save against Ryu, against such a bigger opponent. And now at the end of the chapter, Tayo is like taking off his suit jacket and tie, and he's gonna fight. I'm so excited to see adult Tayo really go all out. I mean, guys, I don't know if you remember, but like this is the main character. Tayo has always been the main character of Mission Yozakura Family, and he's an adult now, and he's a trained spy. He's a gold rank spy now. I mean, he's the guy. He is what we always thought he would become. And so I'm so excited to see this fight. I hope we see a good fight next week between him and Ryu, and then we get Shinzo out of here. And it seems like we're almost at the end. I should mention, I did like I thought the feelings in this chapter were compelling, right? How Katana's like, you really did feel like a father to me. I mean, you took me in when I was so young, and how Ryu feels utterly unworthy of that title, and how this is the motivating factor. And I get that that's a motivating factor. It's just, he is just such a, like, I want to think of him as a villain. It's hard to see him otherwise. But yeah, so that's what's going on. That's kind of my thoughts on Mission Yozakura Family this week. Definitely a good chapter. Definitely a meaningful one, and I'm very excited to see Taiyo fight. But yeah, that's Mission Yozakura Family this week. And that brings us to the Elusive Samurai. This week, chapter 129 came out, and this chapter was all about Tokiyuki versus Ienaga. Again, it's the continuation of this fight. This fight's lasted for a couple chapters now, and it's definitely a really, really good one. I don't think anyone would say otherwise. This is an incredible fight, and I believe we have seen the conclusion of this fight. What I love about this is Ienaga thinks, oh, he went up there so that they will attack him, and then Akae's men will attack me. He's trying to stop this one-on-one because he knows he can't win. And that's not a bad thought, but we see what Tokiyuki's trying to do. He's trying to do that technique that he learned, a long time ago. What is the bear blade, or the technique he uses is 1,000 eye, but two-fanged bear blade. That technique where he uses Kojiro's eyesight to know where to attack someone. But instead, this time he uses all of the eyes of the members of the other army. That's just such a cool way to do it. And he lands the attack. He lands the attack on Ienaga's neck. I love the face of Tokiyuki when he does stab him. Their faces are together where Ienaga is genuinely surprised. He didn't see this coming. And Tokiyuki is not smiling. He's frowning. This is not something he takes a lot of pleasure in. But then we get this weird, alternate universe thing where we see Ienaga playing the guitar, and a bunch of the Ashikaga people that he grew up with are there, and they used to be in this band, but they've all gone their separate ways, and they're asking him what he wants to do with his life. And it's just this picture of, if they were born in a different time, if they were born in today's time and today's culture in Japan, what would they do? How would their lives look differently? What is all the things that they'd be able to accomplish? And one of the things I think is really interesting is that the chapter ends with Ienaga's death, by him saying, "When is the best time to die? For me, it's right now, at 17 years old." And we see, in the alternate timeline, right? We see him say, "How should I spend the next 70 years of life?" He's unsure of what his next goal is, but for him to have this passion and to go out the way he did, this is fulfilling. And he's only 17, but this is a fulfilling life. Ienaga is an incredible character. He's a great character. This was an absolutely incredible chapter, and it's something that Matsui hasn't done in this manga. I mean, in this way. This was a great chapter, an incredible chapter. I look forward to the rest of the Elusive Samurai and where we're going to go from here. But what a great chapter. What a great an interesting message for Ienaga to carry out. So I was definitely a fan of that, and thought it was a super interesting chapter. So those are my thoughts on the Elusive Samurai this week. So the next chapter that we have to go over is the Ichinose family's deadly sins. This week, chapter 45 was released, and this week takes a look at, we pick up where we left off with Tsubasa looking for his dad, and then we see a flashback of his dad as a kid with his grandpa and grandma, obviously, who we know, and obviously they look a lot younger, and how kind his dad was and patient his dad was, with Kakeru, the dad in the family. But then we fast forward to Kakeru seeing how he treats Soda and how much harsher he is with Soda and strict he is with him, and realizing that the reason that his dad was so kind and patient and caring with him is because he didn't expect anything out of him. And now that Soda is around and he thinks Soda will go on to do great things, he expects something of Soda, and so he's harder on him. And that would be a devastating revelation to realize. I mean, to realize that your father, was only nice to you because he thought you were incompetent. I mean, for a man to be told you're incompetent is very hard. I mean, for anybody to be told you're incompetent is very hard, especially by your own father. And while he didn't say that, explicitly, he certainly meant that. And then the mom, also throughout this chapter, begins to have her own flashbacks and rethink about the starting of their family when Soda was born, and how that would continue, and how they would grow, and how it ended up, ending with her confronting Kakeru, the dad, saying that I woke up. I'm going to be honest, this series is so confusing. I am never sure when we are in the dream, when we're in real life. I'm not even sure that I've ever seen real life at this point. I'm not sure how Kakeru seems to be in control of making everyone else asleep, right? But, oh my word, I think I just figured it out. I think I just figured out that in this room with all the monitors that we see in the last page, I think that's the real world that the mom just woke up from and confronts Kakeru. But anyway, this manga is pretty trippy. I don't know if you guys think that too. If you do, I'd love to talk about this one. But it seems like she has woken up. And the thing about this is, like, he's trying to fabricate this happiness that isn't real. And she has finally realized, and so the mom is back in the real world, most likely, and hopefully is going to confront Kakeru. And I don't know where Tsubasa is. I don't know if Tsubasa made it. It looks like he was asleep on the floor earlier in the chapter. But yeah, so we'll see where this goes from here. It's very interesting. It's always very interesting, but it was a good chapter this week for sure. That's kind of what I had to say about the Ichinose family's deadly sins. And that will bring us to our last manga for the day, which is Witch Watch. This week, chapter 129 came out, and oh my word, what a cool chapter. I'm a fan of Witch Watch. I really like this manga, especially the action-heavy chapters, and this is another action-heavy chapter. So we got Ran, we got him with the vampire plant. He's having his energy sapped, and we're in the victory lap, right? Nico goes to heal Moe a little bit and is able to help him there. And we're in the home stretch, right? We are doing it. We're finally able to make it happen. And so Moe goes to pull the paper out of his pocket to check the symbol to see, okay, is this the disaster? Did we finally divert the disaster? And are we good now? And the symbol's still there. And right then, this new character called Shikimi, and we actually saw him a chapter or two ago talking to Ran in Ran's flashback. But Shikimi comes back, and Shikimi is really cool. I gotta be honest, I really like his design as a character. I like a lot of the designs in this manga, but I think that he's an awesome villain character design. So he comes back, and he rips the vampiric plant out of Ran, and in doing so, I think steals Ran's immortality. If I'm wrong about that, leave that in the comments. We'll talk about that down there. But I think he steals Ran's immortality when he takes the plant out. And then, is able to turn it into a flower. He is a plant warlock. He has the ability to control plant life. And so, of course, right? And so Moe gets ready to fight him. He's been healed a little bit. He's got a little bit more gas, right? He's ready. He gets ready to fight him. He squares up with him. And Ran says, get everyone away from the trees, because he'll use that. But then Shikimi, at the end of the chapter, just pulls out a pistol and shoots him twice. And says, I don't see any need to use magic here. It's one of those things where, this world is similar to our world. The magic is, known about, but it's similar to our world in that they have the same technologies and everything. And so you just don't, but they have this magic. And so you don't think about the fact that like guns are there and are guns effective? How would that work? And yeah, of course they're effective, right? Moe is a regular guy. And he gets shot, he gets shot and he goes down. So, I mean, man, I can't wait to see where we're going. I highly doubt that Moe is dead. I highly doubt he's going to die here. If he is going to die or he does die, I think somehow Ran is going to end up giving his life to save Moe's life. I think that's my guess, but I don't think he's going to die. But I want to see what happens with Shikimi. I mean, this is a bad spot for Nico to be in. I mean, this is the guy that's after her. So we'll have to see what happens from here on out. But it was a really good Witch Watch chapter. It was definitely great. But those are my thoughts on Witch Watch this week. And just like that, we come to the end of another Shonen Express podcast. Just to let you all know, in case you haven't figured it out already, the only thing on break this week was Jujutsu Kaisen, although I think that'll be back next week. So we have nothing to worry about there. Definitely very exciting developments in Jujutsu Kaisen right now, so we look forward to that. And my top 3 this week, coming in at number 3, my third favorite manga this week was Witch Watch. I just think the reveal of the villain that we got in this chapter was incredible, and the end of the chapter was also super incredible. My number 2 this week is Mama Yuyu. I really didn't think I would be putting this manga in my top 3, but it really earned it this week. I think Mama Yuyu is my second favorite. This week, again, the twist at the end was really good, and the introduction of a new character, I think, is going to be interesting. So yeah, that's my number 2. And then my number 1 this week, and you probably could have guessed this, is One Piece. I mean, the backstory we're getting right now is absolutely incredible. I didn't even mention the stuff with Kizaru in my review, but either way, One Piece was my number 1 this week. No surprises there. But guys, thanks so much for listening to this video, any parts of this video. If you liked anything that I had to say, please leave it down in the comment section below. Or if you have any comments, leave it down in the comment section below. I'd be happy to talk with you. I love to be able to engage with you guys when you leave comments down there. And if you liked anything, like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Hopefully I'll be doing this every single week. And hopefully I'll get some other videos cooking here at some point. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening to this podcast. And until next time, this is Shonen Express, signing off.